Good morning. I'm Catherine Steele. My company is English Pronunciation for Success, and I host monthly communication webinars. Our topics are of interest to people who are new to North America, or maybe not so new to North America, and are curious about North American communication style and the ways to make that less difficult for your listener. So today I have the extreme pleasure of having Jeff Brandeis of Brandeis Training Solutions as my webinar guest. And Jeff will be speaking on effective business communication. Jeff and I have known each other for a number of years now. We met in San Diego when we were both on a training course for public speakers and speakers who speak as a living. And Jeff does that. He is a trainer, as I've mentioned. He's an author. He's a sales coach, and he brings a wealth of experience to this talk today. So I'm really happy to have Jeff. Thank you, Jeff, very much for being my guest.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Truly appreciate it. Are you ready to rock and roll?
We are rocking and rolling.
Cool. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are listening from. So great to be here. Thank you for joining. I'm just curious, we can type in the chat if you received the PDF file Catherine had sent out yesterday. You can just type in yes or no. I would greatly appreciate it. No, okay. Okay. All right, so those of you who have said no, we will resend it and we'll have it out to you after the webinar. But this is going to be a little different webinar because I'm going to really have you be engaged. I'm going to have you do things you're probably not used to doing during the webinar. So just a little heads up, but we're going to be able to accomplish different communication styles, and you're going to learn how to communicate internally and externally with your people, conceivably a little differently than what you are currently doing today. So if you have the handout, I'm going to refer to it. And if you don't, I'm going to ask you to take a piece of paper, get a pencil or a pen, and I'm going to ask you to write down some things as we go through it, because I truly believe if you write things down, you'll remember things better. So we ready to take this on? Give a little yes in the chat box. Come on, we'll get some excitement going. And
excellent. So I see we've got Umberto and Karen. We have, wow, we're building. I know that we have at least 10 more people to come on this morning and maybe more. So I'm going to encourage everyone, Shiraz, hello, to find the chat at the bottom of the screen. There's a chat bubble. When you click on it, a panel will open up at the very bottom in light gray type. It says, all panelists and attendees. If you click on the arrow, please choose that so we can see each other's messages. And that's where you let us know, can you hear us? Can you see us? And have you got your paper and pencil ready to take notes while Jeff explains this excellent topic of effective business communications?
the ABCs of building trust. So fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to start off with something very simple. Have you ever heard or seen a child, or even possibly yourselves and some adults, ever get the B and the letter D confused? You want to type in the chat, yes or no, real quick? Again, I'm going to keep you folks engaged. So I'm going to ask you to, again, be engaged here. So yes, yes. Very good. Okay, wow. Does anyone know how to fix this or cure it for about 85, 90% of the population? I'm going to give you that cure. So take a piece of paper or an easel, whatever you wish, and put the letter B, there we go, on the wall. Put the child in front of the letter B. You're going to stand behind the child. Have the child trace the B that's on the wall, and at the same time, you trace the letter B on the child's back. And boom, 85, 90% of the time, The child will no longer get the B and the D confused.
That's excellent.
So for some of you, you just learned something, and we're only in not even 2 minutes into the class. So there we go. Something we can find especially write home about now. Okay. So what I did just now was I stretched your mind. We took on a new idea, a new concept. And as we continue to learn, we stretch the mind and never goes back to the original dimension. You might forget things once in a while, but it's in the mind, and it just might take something to make it click for it to come back. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to I'm going to stretch your mind and make you think differently and have you think about how you communicate internally with yourselves, with your employees, and with your spouses or your children. So this is going to be really not just in business, but the techniques I'm going to talk to you about can affect your personal lives as well. And I love that. I'm going to tell a story or two of how that has happened in my life and in some other attendees' lives as well as we move forward. So one of the first things I like to talk about are what the 7 keys to success are in my mind. The first one is passion. You have to have a passion for what you do and how you go about it. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have the passion, you don't have that belief, then people will sense that. People will feel it. And the way you talk about your products, the way you discuss things is totally different than if you had that true passion. The second is the belief. The belief knowing I have the best product, I work for the best company, I have the best support within the industry that you're in. Next one, energy. When you're on a webinar, we're talking about we have energy in the presentation. We have energy that can be conveyed no matter what medium you're talking to people. You're face-to-face, or we're 3,000 or even 10,000 miles apart. So one of the things I do during my webinars and presentations, I stand up. Because when you stand up, you have more energy. It's just natural that you have more energy than when you sit down. And when you sit down, you have some other tendencies of getting tired. You might put your hand on your chin and you begin to slur your words but when you stand up, that energy is there. And you start maybe 10 minutes earlier and you build up that energy. Number 4 is strategy. That's what this program is going to be all about. It's going to teach you some communication and people skill, and it's going to teach you some selling skills. So you got to have a strategy in how you go about your everyday life, how you go about in your sales environment, if you're in sales, or even if you're in customer service. What's your strategy for the day? How are you going to solve problems? How are you going to communicate with people? Number 5, find the power of rapport. And I highlighted trust. We all know that people like to do business with people that they like and trust. So for those of you who have the handout looks like this. So if you come down here, I'd like you to write the word trust in number 5. I'll give you a moment to do that. So bonding power and rapport. People like to do business with people that they like, and write the word trust. Okay, cool. And then number 6 is communication. Being able to communicate with people, being able to listen to people, being able to send a message internally and externally. So communication goes both ways. How I communicate with my people and how I communicate with my customers or my clients or my potential clients. And number 7 is commitment. You got to be committed to doing the best job you can do every day. You got to be committed to providing the best service, the best products, to everything that you provide. So you got to be committed to the job that you're in. 7 keys to success. May I ask, and I want you to use the chat function here, and Catherine, I want you monitor this. What's the most trusted profession? I'll give everyone a minute or two to think about what they would think is the most trusted profession.
I'm going to welcome Sarah and Shiraz, and I look forward to seeing what your answer is to the most trusted profession. And I see that Remy says doctor, and Lily says medical care.
We're in the right profession. That's great.
Let's see if we get a few more. Priest. Thanks, Lily. Pilot is Long's answer.
True. I haven't heard pilot before, so that's
Yeah,
good.
that's interesting. Yeah, that's a good one. Humberto says education, teachers. That makes
Okay.
me feel good. That's
That's
my
good.
background.
I guess it's not often you actually get on the aeroplane and you ask the pilot. You know
You
how
know
the,
what you're doing.
but
Yeah.
the most trusted profession, as we
And
talked about,
Karen says lawyer. Yeah.
and it is nurses. Okay. When you go in,
Oh, okay.
the nurse gives you a pill. You don't ask her if that's the right pill, or she draws you blood and you don't go, do you know, is this your first time doing this? You know how to do this? We just take it for granted that nurses by far are doing the right thing for us. So that was the most trusted. So let's go to someone who wrote sales as being the most trusted.
Yeah, Shiraz says sales. Thank you,
I love
Shiraz.
you. Thank you, Shiraz. Thank you. So let's go to most mistrusted. Oops, I just gave you the answer. So what's the most mistrusted profession?
Okay, type that in. The person you do not trust, that you mistrust in general.
Lawyers. Love it.
Politicians.
Yeah.
Thank you, Remy and Lily.
Okay.
Anybody else? Sales is Lana. Bankers is Karen.
Okay. So it is politicians or lobbyists. Right up there, very close to number one is, of course, used car salespeople or car sales guys. And by the way, it's a great movie. You know, Glengarry Glen Ross, for all those of you in sales, Always Be Closing, ABCs. If you haven't watched it, it's definitely a classic. So, I'm sure you can find it on Netflix or on Amazon fairly cheaply. Okay, so let me ask another question. Which is stronger, love or trust? Type your answer in the chat, please. Okay, we got a mixture. All right, great. So, have you ever heard someone say, we just broke up? I still love them, but I just don't trust them. Trust is actually is stronger than love at
And
the
we
end,
have everybody on the call saying trust, 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 trust.
for sure. Okay, so we all agree trust is the biggest factor in our lives. We all agree that people will buy from people who they like and trust. So how do I build that trust faster and make it stronger than I ever have before? Give me a tool. So for those of you who have the handout, turn the page and go to page 3. And for those of you who don't have the handout, get ready, because I'm going to ask you to write down a few words. So for those of you who don't have the handout, write down the word neuro.
Okay.
Okay. Then write down the word linguistic. And now I would like you to write down programming. So if you have a handout, this looks like this. You have the word neuro, linguistic, programming. Okay, with a line. So below neuro, what's another word for neuro? Let's go into the chat.
Okay. Type into the chat the meaning of neuro, the definition of neuro.
We'll put nerves.
Nerves. I was thinking brain, head, mind.
Brain, here we go.
Somebody says brain. Thanks, Carolina.
So good, below neuro, put brain.
Reflective is Lily. Lovely.
All right, so below neuro, put brain. Linguistic. Now that's a tough word, and sometimes people haven't heard that one before. So I'm going to ask you to do something you probably haven't done before on a webinar, especially if you're sitting there by yourself or you're sitting in front of a group of people. I'd like you to repeat after me and say the word linguistic. 1, 2, 3, linguistic.
Linguistic.
Try again. 1, 2, 3, linguistic.
Linguistic.
One more time. 1, 2, 3, linguistic.
Linguistic.
Okay, so what's another word for linguistic? Write it in the chat.
Let's see if we get anything.
Communication and language. All right, great. So language, let's write speak.
Speak.
It's a little easier.
Okay. So we've got brain for neuro, speak for linguistic,
Or even talk. You can put talk.
talk. Okay.
Okay. So programming. Catherine, can I program a computer to tell me what time to wake up?
Yes.
So that input a computer information into it. Can the computer also provide me a printed document or provide me information that I ask a question, it can actually give me an answer?
Mm-hmm.
Correct. So that's called output. So really what we're going to have here is brain talk, input, and output.
Nice. And Remy and Long are saying processing and instruction. Interesting.
All good. So when you think about this, brain talk, input into my brain, right? And equals how I learn is how I buy. How I learn is how I buy. Brain talk input and how I communicate is my output with my other people.
Okay.
So this phrase, how I learn, how I buy, is going to be resonating throughout this class because it's so important when you speak to people, you understand how they learn and you're able to understand that. You'll build trust quicker and we'll get there as we move along.
Mm-hmm.
So those of you, again, who have the handout, you have the visual, which means sight, means I can see things, right? Visual people see things. Auditory people, what? They hear things. And kinesthetic, I'd like you to write down in the, sorry about that. What I'd like you to do is write down the 35, 25, and 40 next to each one. And kinesthetic is also probably a word that many of you have never heard before. So I'm going to ask you again. Say the word kinesthetic. We're going to do it 3 times because I know people tend to remember things in threes. That's one of the rules I always like to enforce. So 1, 2, 3, kinesthetic.
Kinesthetic.
Again, 1, 2, 3, kinesthetic.
Kinesthetic.
1, 2, 3, kinesthetic.
Kinesthetic.
Okay. So what's kinesthetic? Stay tuned. You'll hear about that in a short matter.
And it looks really important because it's the largest percentage of the 3. So
It is. And when you're able to match your output to the people's learning style, you're going to build 3 times rapport in 1/3 of the time. So kinesthetic people are typically people that like to feel. They like to touch. They want to be able to experience something, typically with their hands. But typically, most people will be a combination of kinesthetic, meaning feel, and or visual, because they like to see things and like to touch things, or they like to be able to feel things and they also want it be spoken to them. So think about that. So think about how I started this presentation. So I have PowerPoint slides. I've asked you to take your pen and pencil and write things down. I've asked you to repeat words to me that you probably have not heard before. I'm covering all the bases in this presentation because I don't know your learning style. So I'm covering all the learning style. That is what NLP is all about. Neuro-linguistic programming. It's matching the output to the input and building that rapport 3 times faster in 1/3 of the time. We'll dive a little deeper into this. It is a fantastic tool. And once you really understand how to use it, it will change how you communicate with people. So We just went through this. Visuals, judge everything on what they see.
Mhm.
Auditories, judge things on what they hear. And kinesthetic, judge things on what they feel. Okay? So where does feeling come from? What do we have 5 of? Into the 5 of.
Okay, write that one into the chat, everybody. Everybody comes into the world as a baby with 5 what? So what, who, where, when, nice, and why? Thanks, Lily. Any other answers? That's a big one in my world. And other people are saying senses.
Very good.
Lovely.
We come in the world, we have 5 senses.
Yeah. And I
So
would imagine that the grammar comes from that as well. Us needing to know who, what, when, where, why is part of the senses. Mm-hmm.
very good.
Wonderful. So taste, smell, hearing, touch. I'm missing one. Sight.
Very good, Catherine. I think you can just continue.
Sorry.
You're doing great.
And emotional. Thanks, Nasreen. Yes.
So kinesthetic people, they use all their senses. And that's why 20% of the population is the greatest percentage of the population. But typically, they're 1 or 2. So they're usually 20% plus visuals, which was 35, right? In the previous slide. And that's the reason. Now, I know we have a lot of people who are fairly young here that probably won't remember this, but that's the reason why TV took over radio so fast. Because people like to see things and they like to hear things because they're more kinesthetic that way than just listening. And what you're going to find as you put this to use, the older generation are probably going to be more auditory. And then as you move down, they'll become more kinesthetic with the visuals, just because of how they were brought up and the environments. Interesting, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So again, how we learn is how we buy. So customer 1 walks in, and let's say I'm an accounting firm, and says, I want to take a look at how I can lower my taxes. Can you show me something that I can read? I saw your advertisement. The salesman or the accountant, definitely not trained in sales, says, let me tell you all about the tax savings ideas we have. Have you heard what people have been saying? And at that moment, you lost an opportunity. You lost a connection. What did I do wrong? Customer number 2 comes in 3 hours later and says, I want to ask you some questions about this inheritance tax. Can you tell me about how this will affect me? I heard it's a great time for me to look into this. And the accountant, again, not being well trained, says, welcome to widgets, CPAs. Please look at this brochure. Let me show you a sample plan. Wrong. You just lost the sale. What happened? What happened was the first person walked in and said, what? I'm looking. Can you show me? I saw. I'd like to see. What kind of words are those? They're visuals. And the salesperson said, let me tell you, I heard, say, and now I'm happy to explain. And at that moment, the brain goes buzz because you disconnected. They were using visual terms, but you came back with an auditory response. Second person came in and said, what? I wanted to ask, can you tell? I heard. Did you hear? What types of words are these? And the salesperson said, let's look, I'll show. Have you seen? I can give you a picture of how all this works. And again, disconnect between the 2 people. The brain goes zzz from the customer. That's a technical term, by the way, Catherine. It just doesn't process between the 2. So what's the point? When you're able to switch your presentation to match up to their input, it gets into their brain. It makes that connection. 3 times the rapport in 1/3 the time. I promise you, this works. I use it all the time. It is a phenomenal technique. And this is just, we're just touching the surface here, quite honestly. So there are 3 ways to uncover V.A.K. So that's the acronym, V.A.K. Visual, auditory, and that tough word, kinesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
There are 3 ways to uncover it. The words that they use. So again, let's write down some of those words that people use for visual.
Okay. Are you going to get us to type in the chat? I've got one.
Put them in the chat. Go ahead, Catherine. So type in the chat some visual words. See, look, I see that. Looks good. Fantastic. I see that. So look, see, picture. Yep, all good. Now let's move into auditory words. Give me some auditory. Type those into the chat. Listen here, I heard that. All good. They're getting it. Congratulations. And let's put some kinesthetic words in there now.
That one I would find a bit harder.
Remember what kinesthetics were? Touch, great. Thank you. Feel, seems.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Feel that.
Great stuff. All good. Appreciate everyone's participation. Thank you.
Okay.
Great to see that. So what happens if you don't understand or you can't pick up the customer's learning and buying style? What do you do then? Uh-oh. Things, a technical term. You do all 3.
Okay.
All right. Now get ready. You have a box down near the bottom, and we're going to fill that in with this magical sentence. I'll show you the numbers. I'll explain things in detail so you'll feel more comfortable. Write that
love
down.
that. Yeah, that's amazing.
I'll show you all my visuals. I'll explain, takes care of the auditory people. Feel, takes care of the kinesthetic. You may not put in, I'll show you the numbers. Maybe you put in, I'll show you the product, I'll show you the car, I'll show you the computer, whatever, okay? I'll explain things in detail so you'll feel more comfortable. So you take this nice, concise sentence and you're covered. Do you like that?
I love that. Oh.
It's powerful. It truly is. So, personal story. I was at a presentation. My phone buzzes, and it's my friend Fred, and then who texts me, they want to put my kids on drugs. I text back on the break, who does? The school. Said he's disruptive, won't stop talking, his grades were failing. You think this V.A.K. stuff, that's his technical term, V.A.K. stuff, might be a fix for Adam. I wrote back, I'll give you a call, obviously, when I'm done, let's talk. So I go back, and in grades 1 through 5, Adam was an A and B student. He went into 6th grade, and now this is what's transpired. It took me about a week or 10 days to sit down with Adam and try to figure things out. And it wasn't full days, it went over for an hour or so. I think I finally figured it out. So I said to Fred, let's go to school, bring your checkbook, and let's sit down with the principal. He goes, what do you mean, bring my checkbook? I said, that's the only part that's disruptive that you're thinking about? Let's go sit down with the principal. I think I know what transpired. So we go into the school, and I asked the principal, how much are Adam's books? So he says $300. Said, okay. Fred, write him a check for $300. Okay, Adam does what I do. I mean, Fred says, writes a check for 300, hands over to the principal. So I said to the principal, okay, so now we own the books, correct? He says, yes, they're your books. What are you going to do with them? So I said to Fred and the principal, so in grades 1 through 5, Adam had workbooks. He was able to write in the workbooks. He was able
Mm-hmm.
to take notes in his workbooks. He was able to underline things in the workbooks. When you got to grade 6, they switched the textbooks, and you
Yeah.
were not allowed to write in textbooks. You couldn't highlight in textbooks. You couldn't take notes in textbooks. And Adam was never trained on how to take notes in other ways. So he didn't know what to do during school, so he got disrupted
Oh.
because the teacher didn't know. I mean, typically you go to school, the teacher teaches one way, and that's the way they teach.
Mm.
And I'll bring in one other point here because we're where we are in our lives and the country and the world. We're seeing more homeschooling right now than we've ever seen before.
Mm-hmm.
So think about this if you're homeschooling your child, about how they learn. Have you seen a change in grades? Have you seen a change in how they teach? Because teaching virtually is different than teaching face to face even. So
Mm-hmm.
personal story on how this actually works or can work within your personal lives. And to be candid with you, I love people who tell me that they made a sale, they blew out their quota, and they put all things from the business side of things, because from a sales technique, this works great. But I also get almost more satisfaction, candidly, when someone comes to me and says, hey, Jeff, I took your class 3 months ago. I now have the best rapport with my son or my daughter or my wife or my friend than I ever had before, because now I have better communication skills than I ever had before.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a kind of a unique webinar in that this actually is a ability to take business communication and move it into your personal lives.
Mm-hmm. Nasreen is saying that now the problem with the kids is that the internet and the access to electronics, that's become a problem.
It could be a problem. So it's really a question of what are you doing? I'm not into parenting. Okay, that's not my specialty here. But I would ask, what can you do to have your child do something different than be on the electronics, to divert their attention away from, the iPad, the phone, or gaming. So it's, finding something else that would keep them occupied or their attention doing something different would be one of my recommendations. And again, I don't want to cross lines in psychology or being offering parental guidance, but that's what I would do as a
Yeah,
father. Okay.
yeah, I love that. Give them more options.
Yep.
And Nasreen says, thanks a lot.
My pleasure. You're welcome. So there's many different ways visual learners can learn and they combine. So they see visual words, which is a brochure. You can show them the product. They love to see pictures and graphs. And now, in so many ways, with everyone having phones, take a short video and send it to a prospect, send it to a customer. Differentiate yourself that way, because I promise you, your competition are not sending videos. Thank you so much for coming in and looking at the stereo system I just showed you. Imagine how this would look in your living room, in your entertainment room. Thank you for stopping by. Look forward to coming in and hope to see you soon, as opposed to typing out an email and sending it in, or doing a quick text and say thanks. People will watch videos. 85% of the videos that people send out short and sweet get viewed. It's truly amazing. So in a lot of ways, video is the new phone, and you should use your video. And there's so many free tools out there that you could use to create your own videos. Plus your own cell phone. Right off the bat, you can create your own video. So again, I urge you, use video, use the voiceover. You don't have to have yourself on the video. I know everyone always goes, "Oh no, I'm not in the video. My hair is not done," or you know, or, "I didn't shave this morning," or you know, "I'm not dressed nicely." That's okay. So shoot a video of the product that they saw, that you talk to them about, or just again show them something. Take a picture of the product and send it to them. You're following up in a way that no one else candidly is doing. It's a great sales technique and it really works. And it's simple.
Umberto agrees with you. He says that people prefer watching videos rather than reading. They sell more. Yeah.
Agreed. So auditory learners, they use the auditory words. Another thing you could do with auditory people is begin to use some voice inflection. Get them to come in closer, then raise your voice, get them back, you know, so they want to listen to you intently. So use voice inflection. This is a great product. Those of you who know Tony the Tiger might remember that one from some cereal. But voice inflection has tremendous impact on auditory people. So think about speaking loudly, do a great or something to accentuate a word, or just talk a little softer and get the auditory people to listen in a little closer.
Like you're whispering like a secret. Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Another little tip for auditory people. Recognizing auditory customer, you know them. They think out loud. They talk to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You'll know them. We all have them in our offices when we were actually working in an office, right? They come to you and they just go blah 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 blah. They would chit chat. They would just continue to talk. You ask them a question, oh, and sometimes you'd see them coming down the hall. What'd you do? Right? Because you didn't want to take 20 minutes for a little chit chat, but they talked out loud. You don't have to wonder what they're thinking of because they'll tell you. So that's how you'll pick up pretty quick if they're auditory like that.
Mm-hmm.
You never have to wonder what they're thinking because they're always going to tell you. Kinesthetic, again, they use kinesthetic words, touch, feel. Watch for the shifting. They shift a little bit more because they want to be actively moving, okay? They're using all their senses. They learn by doing. They like to see things. They like to feel things. They're engaged that way. So do what you can to keep them engaged. And that's why I try to send out the PDFs to you folks in advance. Because some of you want to be able to feel that paper. You want to see where I'm going down on the path. And you have a documentation. So if you're doing a webinar or you're doing a presentation to people, provide them something. Leave some blank lines for them, just like I did, so that they can fill it in. Ask them to write down some keywords. And some of the things that we did, I left the keywords here for kinesthetic, for you to fill in auditory. I left the spaces here for you to put the 20, 35, 40% numbers into the gaps. The more you can write, the more you'll remember. And you keep the people engaged through your webinar. And also, you'll see down here, I already have in the box. I'll show you the numbers, explain things in detail, so you'll feel comfortable. What I would like you to write in this box is 3x, three times the rapport in 1/3 the time. So write that in your empty box right there. 3x, which means 3 times rapport, 1/3 the time. That's what happens when you're able to match your presentation to their learning. So think about things right now. You got it. Thank you. So think about the cars that we drive, the newer cars. Okay? Think about what the car industry has done, right? Kinesthetic is on the steering wheel. it starts to shake, right?
Oh.
So that
Hmm.
you feel things. If you're getting too close to the curb or you're getting to the yellow line, it warns you, right? Same thing with auditory now. It starts to beep at you if you're moving lane and someone's off to the side. Beep, 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 beep. And the visuals even on your dashboard. So you have visuals.
Hmm.
This, these are all signs of how our industries, like the automobile, is using V.A.K to make it safer for us because those are part of our senses, not just relying upon you to make sure you look, left or behind you. You got the rear view mirror that starts to beep as you move back, right, too close to the pole, right? So those are all things that the automobile industry has done because they realize they can make it safer for us by using V.A.K. Again, neuro, brain talk input, output, NLP, neuro linguistic program. How we learn is how we buy. So I don't know how many of you are in the same company or you work together, but as soon as we get out of this COVID world and we get back into office spaces and we start to communicate with people, I want you to take your fingers and make a V. Hold it up high. Come on, higher, higher. Come on, people. I can see you. There we go. Okay. Now take your fingers and make an upside down V. So you're making an A. Okay. Now go waist level, shape of a K on the side. You can't see my side, but you're good. So you're going that way. That's fantastic. Because now if you work in the same environment, you now have hand signals. You have a secret code.
Oh.
So you're speaking to a customer or a prospect, and the other person that's on this call, or you're going to train them in V.A.K, comes into the room. You hold up a big V, will now know that's a visual person. Okay, you hold them down, you're going to now, that person coming in the room is going to go, oh, that's an auditory person, or you got a kinesthetic. So now you have hand signals that you can use in your office, your own form of sign language. Okay, how are we doing out there? We're doing good? Type in a yes, or if I'm not, you can let me know that too. Type in a no.
And you know what? I would love people to put V, A, or K if they think they know their personal style. That would be interesting to me. I got a million yeses and a smile, two V's,
All
three
right,
V's, lots of visuals. One kinesthetic, thanks.
all right, we're gonna find
Got
out.
more V's. You know what I realized when you were speaking that when I was a child, and probably now as well, we were told to hold our hands behind our back if we went into a store. So we weren't touching everything when we were little. And I really still want to touch everything. I want to feel the fabric. I need to learn, maybe because I don't see so well, I want to touch everything. So I think I'm fairly kinesthetic. And then as a pronunciation coach, listening, auditory, that's a big one for me. So this is so interesting. I'm one of everything, I think.
That's fine. We all are pieces of a puzzle at the end of the day. So we're putting our pieces of the puzzle together.
Great. Thanks, everybody. I see Sarah's kinesthetic too. Lots of V's and two
Cool.
K's on there.
All right, so let's go to the next challenge. Husband and wife walks into your store. One's visual, one's auditory. What do you do now? Ah, good question, Jeff. Yeah, what we're going to do is you have to sell them both. Okay? You bet you do. Hello, Mrs. Jones. Nice to see you. Can you imagine what your neighbor's going to be talking about when they see you coming down the street in that fur coat? They're going to be going, oh, wow, look how great she looks. Mr. Jones, let me show you this brochure. I know you would like to see things and you want to be able to feel things and touch it. So here's a brochure. Take a look at it. Let me know what kind of questions you have, and I'll be happy to review that with you. So I kind of just went to both. Okay, I did the auditory and I did the visual. So it kind of matched I had to speak to both of them. And what happens is all of a sudden they both like you. They don't know why they like you. They like you because you just connected with each other. So you're able to, again, figure out the buying styles of the people. You'll build a rapport three times faster, 1/3 the time. And they don't know why. It's so magical. It really is. It's fun for me to watch when that happens. So what's the point? Am I teaching you to be better listeners? Yeah. Do we need to be better listeners? Yeah. So this is usually a time where if we're face-to-face, I ask you to take a test. Oh no, test time. But it's a great test. And those of you who have this, we're not going to do it right now, just do the time. But this is in the handouts. And for those of you who don't have the handouts, this is on page 6. And I'm going to ask you later on, whenever, go through these questions, answer them yes or no. And for every yes, put the total in the box. And go to the next section. Answer yes or no, put the total in the box. And then also down here, yes, no, total in the box. For those of you who think you're visual, you have the most yeses up in the top. For those of you who think you're auditory, you'll have the most yeses in the middle. And for those of you who are kinesthetic, you have the most yeses down on the bottom. Self-evaluation. So print out a copy. Actually, I provide 2, because I usually do this if I was face-to-face. So I provide a blank sheet. So you can just print off as many sheets as you want. Give it to your husband, give it to your spouse, give it to your whomever you want. And you'll be very intrigued to find out really what type of person they really are. And Catherine obviously asked you what type of person you are from visual. Take the test and see if the test actually matches your learning style.
And see if that's true. Interesting.
Oops. So those are the test questions. But those, as I said, those of you who have the answers, you'll have yeses in all of them. So there's no right, there's no wrong in here. But whichever category you have the most yeses, that's your strength. And that's how you learn best. And that's how you buy best. So for homework, besides taking the test, I'd like you to turn on the TV if you're a sports fanatic or you like to watch sports, or even if you don't like to watch sports. Sports is more than likely the most V.A.K. announcers that there conceivably are, because they'll talk about how they touched the ball, they passed the ball, how they mapped out that play. Oh, they're doing an audible. Okay, they changed the play. Okay, they sensed or they felt that they were about to get sacked, so he ran the other way. So I'd like you to write the V.A.K. out and put every time you hear a V.A.K. word, just put a little tick mark or a 1 and see how many times you pick up on it. Give the test to a few people. Send SMS videos. Again, I can't stress enough, begin to use videos. And change V.A.K., use V.A.K. to everybody, not just on a selected basis. For those of you who work for a company and you have a CRM tool, customer relationship management tool, where you take notes, put what type of learning style that person is in your notes. That way, when you go back to them in the future, you don't have to kind of rethink again what kind of learning style that person has. You already have it documented in your notes. So again, to summarize, 3 ways to uncover V.A.K. We went through in depth the words that they use. The other 2 sections, which we might be able to cover, Catherine, if I can come back at another time, would be the eyes. Where do the eyes go? Up or down, or side by side, or do they look down? That's the second one, Q. And then the third